the Vicious Six, El Macho, the Anti-Villain League. Gru has survived all of them, but Title 29 of the Code of Federal Regulations might be the one thing he may not survive. Gru's entire operation is a decades-long workplace safety disaster that somehow gets worse with every sequel. And OSHA doesn't care about moon heists or the Zodiac Stone. It cares about workplaces. And Gru's underground lair is a full-blown industrial operation with unguarded platforms, machinery, chemicals, and hundreds of invincible, indestructible, and immortal workers called the Minions. If OSHA ever got inside that lair with a citation book, Gru would go down like Al Capone, screwed by paperwork. So let's do what OSHA would do. Movie by movie, violation by violation, fine by fine. Serious violations get fined $16,550. Willful or repeated ones hit $165,514 each. The running total starts at 0. Let's see how fast that changes. Before we jump into Gru's operation, there's one movie we need to address. Minions from 2015. That's the one where Kevin, Stuart, and Bob are searching for a villain to serve and end up working for Scarlet Overkill in London. It's a great movie, but it's also completely irrelevant to this count because Gru barely appears. Gru only shows up as a kid at the very end, freeze rays Scarlet and Herb Overkill, and steals the Queen's crown for himself. The Minions aren't his workers yet, but they decide to follow him as their new boss after this. So any violations in that movie, the Tower of London heist, the coronation disaster, all of that's on Scarlet. The Gru workplace story actually starts in 1976 San Francisco. Gru is 11 years old, living with his mom, and already running a villain operation out of the basement. Now, 11 might seem young, and I actually thought Gru could just use his age as a loophole to avoid consequences, but when I looked into it, I was stunned. Being under 18 is apparently not the license to do crime that I thought it was. Under federal law, children as young as 11 can be prosecuted as adults if they commit serious crimes. The states are even scarier. In Florida, the minimum age is actually 7. But that's not the worst of it. There are 24 states that don't have a minimum age for criminal responsibility at all. So theoretically, they could prosecute a baby and sentence him to life in prison if they really wanted to. So, Gru is not weaseling his way out of OSHA fines. Now, let's start counting up the violations. A few minutes into the opening, we get a montage of Gru and 3 minions. They release a gas that clears everyone out of a theater so they can watch the movie alone. Then you see Gru put on a gas mask, but the 3 minions don't. They're just sitting there eating popcorn while breathing whatever chemical Gru just released. That's the first violation right there. Chemical gas in an enclosed space. The boss has a mask, the workers don't. This is a serious respiratory protection failure because Gru is 11, and this is his first operation. OSHA would treat it as a program failure, dangerous for sure, but not yet evidence of willful disregard. Running total, $16,550. Then a few scenes later, we get to see the basement layer in Gru's mom's house. It's a workplace full of equipment, tools, chemicals, and minions building villain gadgets. And it's a disaster. You see a bunch of minions in hard hats, others with no PPE at all, just overalls. The inconsistency proves that there's no actual safety program implemented over here. So before we count specific incidents, we need to log the facility-wide setup failures. 7 big ones stick out like sore thumbs. Inconsistent PPE enforcement, no machine guarding on power tools and equipment, no hazard communication program for experimental chemicals, no emergency planning or fire protection, no sanitation facilities, no injury record keeping, and no lockout-tagout procedures. These are all serious violations because Gru is 11 and building his first operation. Dangerous, but not yet elevated to willful. That's 7 serious violations at $16,550 each. Running total, $132,400. Now, the movie shows you what the work culture is like in the lair, and it's just one big gag montage. 2 minions are hammering a nail. The one holding it keeps sliding it out of the way. The other one gets annoyed and smacked him with the hammer. They're both wearing hard hats, which is actually more protection than we'll see in later movies. But that doesn't make hitting a coworker with a hammer okay. This is a serious workplace violence during a work task. And again, it's serious because it's an injury event from a lack of supervision, not employer-directed violence. Another $16,550 to the total. Running total, $148,950. Then you see 3 minions sawing a single plank of wood while standing on top of it. All of them fall through as the plank weakens. That's a fall hazard from obviously unsafe work practices. Serious because the boss is responsible for training and supervision, which clearly didn't happen. Running total, $165,500. We then see a small rocket being tossed and caught like a football, tools thrown high in the air, power tools used with no safety controls. But the major event that triggers a violation here is a rocket being mishandled, and then it explodes. 2 minions carrying a stretcher arrive to carry away the injured worker. So that's explosives being handled in a basement workshop with no safety protocols, no blast containment, no distance requirements, and workers getting injured. That's willful disregard for handling explosives. So we add $165,514 to the tally. Running total, $331,014. The montage continues. A minion is just standing there while another minion aims and fires a blowtorch at him. The worker being torched has no protection. The one holding it has a full helmet on. I'm categorizing this as a serious burn hazard violation because it's not clear if Gru ordered the specific activity or if workers are freelancing. Another $16,550. Running total, $347,564. Now Gru goes for his interview with the Vicious Six and he explicitly tells the minions not to come. 4 of them follow anyway without Gru knowing, so here's where it gets legally interesting. Gru gave a direct order. They disobeyed. For OSHA purposes, this is important because employer liability typically requires the employer to direct the work. But once Gru finds them during the chase and continues using them to escape, they're back on the clock. The moment he accepts their help, he's directing their work again. The chase scene is intense. Gru steals the Zodiac Stone, the Vicious Six pursue him, all 4 minions plus Gru are on his bike with no helmets, no protective gear, nothing. Otto falls off when they go down a flight of stairs in an alleyway, and another minion falls and slams into a pickup truck when Gru brakes hard. This is a life or death chase with obvious severe hazards. Once Gru discovered the minions were with him and continued the escape using them, he knowingly exposed workers to severe hazards. The motorcycle operation with multiple passengers, no helmets at high speed during a violent chase, that's willful exposure to recognized hazards that are likely to cause death or serious physical harm. Another $165,514 added. Running total, $513,078. They escape and throw a celebration. Otto slides into the lair and crashes into a few minions like a bowling ball. That's workplace horseplay, but it's not during a directed work activity, it's a celebration. We won't add a separate citation. Then comes Otto's side quest. Otto was separated during the chase with the Zodiac Stone. Gru instructed him to protect the stone and return home. While trying to get back, Otto trips into a mud puddle near ongoing construction, has several small accidents, and eventually trades the priceless Zodiac Stone for a pet rock at a kid's birthday party. Here's the question though, is Otto still at work? The answer is yes. Gru gave him a job task, but the sidewalk construction that causes him to trip isn't under Gru's control. OSHA violations require the employer to control the hazard. So while Otto's journey is work-related, the hazards he encounters aren't Gru's OSHA violations. Otto returns with the pet rock. Gru realizes what happened, and in anger, Gru fires all of the minions, en masse. This is the critical moment for OSHA liability. From this point forward until Gru rehires them at the end, the minions are not Gru's employees. They want to rescue Gru out of loyalty, but Gru didn't instruct them to do it. He fired them. So everything that happens during their rescue mission, breaking out of prison, the kung fu training, the final battle, none of that is Gru's OSHA liability. You can't violate workplace safety regulations for workers you've terminated. On top of the OSHA violations, Gru is also on the hook for all workplace injuries. Now, for workers' compensation, we're using the numbers posted by the National Safety Council. So for the hammer strike, that's $47,316. The 3 minion plank fall is $163,497 at $54,499 for each minion. The rocket explosion injury is $77,614 for a lost time injury with multiple body parts affected. Otto's motorcycle fall is another $54,499, and the Minion slamming into the pickup truck is another $54,499. Workers' comp total, $370,228. So, the Minions' Rise of Gru totals come out to $513,078 in OSHA fines, with workers' comp at $397,425 for a combined total of $910,503. But here's the thing, those citations all come with abatement dates, typically 30 days to fix the hazards. If Gru doesn't fix them within that window, OSHA can charge failure to abate penalties at $16,550 per day, per violation. Now, you might be wondering, what happens after those 30-day failure to abate windows expire? In the real world, OSHA can take even more severe measures, follow-up inspections, increase penalties, and even shut down operations entirely. But tracking those escalating penalties across a span of over 3 or so decades would turn this into a spreadsheet nightmare. And in all honesty, if that happens, Gru might not even be able to run this kind of operation for that long in the real world. For the sake of this video though, we're keeping it conservative with the standard 30-day caps. The real number would probably be astronomical. Now, coming back to the penalty charges, we've got 7 system-wide hazards that we really never see Gru address. Running those penalties for the full 30-day cap comes out to $3.47 million in additional fines, just for ignoring the deadlines. And that's all at the tender age of 11. We jump forward to 2010. Gru is an adult. He's been running this operation for decades. The lair has expanded from a basement into a massive underground facility. And nothing has improved. Catwalks everywhere, elevated platforms with no guardrails, steel beams hanging mid-air, minions running and carrying tools and parts like this is a shift at a normal job. Except there's no fall protection, no machine guards, no safety signage, no visible emergency exits, nothing. An OSHA inspector would start writing citations for all of this before anyone even trips. Fall protection at height with no guardrails anywhere, no PPE program despite overhead hazards and chemical work, no hazard communication for experimental substances, no machine guarding on industrial equipment, no lockout tagout procedures, exposed electrical wiring and sparking circuits, and no emergency planning or fire protection. These are willful violations because this isn't Gru's first rodeo. He's been running operations since 1976. He knows what safety looks like. He just chooses not to implement it. That's 7 willful violations at $165,514 each, adding up to $1,158,598. Running total, $1,158,598. Then we'll add 2 more for compliance paperwork, no adequate sanitation facilities for the workforce size, and no injury record keeping despite numerous visible injuries. These are serious violations at $16,550 each, adding $33,100. Running total, $1,191,698. And that's before anyone gets hurt, which, spoiler alert, they absolutely do. Now the movie actually starts. We see 2 minions are up on an elevated platform hammering on a bolt. No helmets, no harnesses, no guardrails. Then the minion with the hammer swings and cracks the other one right on the head. Just like the case with the previous movie, this is a serious citation for injury response failure because there's no visible medical protocol, no first aid response, and no documentation. The injury happens and work just continues. Add $16,550. Running total, $1,208,248. Then you see another elevated work moment that's somehow worse. A minion is sitting on top of a giant claw mechanism carrying down a steel beam. Another minion is sitting on some kind of rod nearby, also with nothing under him. Then the second minion jumps from the beam onto the claw. They both wobble. There's no fall arrest system, no secondary attachment. We've already covered this under the facility-wide fall protection citation, but it's perfect proof of the citation in action. Then Gru gathers everyone for the big speech. Everyone's excited. The minions pull out weapons like it's a pep rally. And then one of them, Dave, fires a rocket launcher, indoors, in the middle of the lair. About 7 minions go flying through the air and crash down. That's a willful hazard happening at work under the boss's presence in front of everyone. Add $165,514. Running total, $1,373,762. Now the plot moves into the shrink ray heist. Gru and 2 minions cut a hole in the roof of the facility holding the ray. Then they lower 1 minion down through that opening using the claw system. No harness, no proper aerial work platform, and no helmet. And on the way back up, he bangs his head on the ceiling. Twice. You can almost hear the OSHA investigator taking notes. This is, again, a serious violation for using lifting equipment as an improvised personal lift without proper controls. Add $16,550. Running total, $1,390,312. Then Vector steals the shrink ray from Gru's airship. And Gru orders a minion to fire at Vector. So that's management directing a worker into a combat situation with obvious risk of death. The airship then gets shrink rayed, partially explodes, and all 3 of them are left floating on a chunk of wreckage in the sky. This is willful because the employer knowingly directed employees into a life-threatening confrontation. Gru gave the order, the worker followed it. So I'm adding another $165,514. Running total, $1,555,826. After Gru adopts the girls, you might expect some higher safety standards. Maybe he installs one guardrail because kids are living upstairs now? Nope. You go back underground and see minions on the same steel beams, handling the same dangerous objects. Rockets, explosives, tools, all at height, all with open edges, more proof footage for the facility-wide violations we already counted. And then you see Dr. Nefario testing out an anti-gravity serum with minions as his guinea pigs. 1 minion drinks it and starts floating. He flies out of the lab and disappears into the sky, because there's an open skylight in the ceiling. Later in the movie, you see him floating in orbit around the moon. That minion never explicitly comes back. That's a catastrophic exposure event. A worker is given an experimental substance with no safety testing, no informed consent, and no containment. This is willful because Dr. Nefario, working under Gru's direction, administered an untested chemical agent with catastrophic results. The open skylight was a known facility condition. Add another $165,514. But that's not all of it. If that anti-gravity test counts as a worker death, and it sure looks like it, then this is the one moment where Gru's OSHA problems can cross into criminal territory. A willful violation that causes an employee's death can be prosecuted, with potential fines up to $250,000 for an individual, and up to 6 months of jail time on the table. Running total, $1,721,340. About 10 more minions are stuck to the ceiling from the same serum. They're just trapped up there while work continues below. This is additional proof of the same willful chemical exposure violation, so we won't double count it. Then Dr. Nefario tests another invention. Gru asks for a dart gun, Nefario makes a fart gun instead. He fires it and it knocks out a minion. This is willful again because an experimental agent was created at work, tested on a worker without safety protocols, and incapacitated them. Gru and Nefario are both present. Both know it's experimental. Add $165,514. Running total, $1,886,854. At this point, you might be wondering if Gru ever considers safety training. The answer is a big fat no. Later, Gru and 2 minions break into Vector's lair and steal back the shrink ray. They crawl through vents carrying the device, nearly fall through an opening, and the 2 minions form a chain to stop Gru from dropping. Then all 3 fall anyway, but survive. This is a willful violation because Gru planned this heist and knowingly directed workers to crawl through elevated vents with no fall protection. The fact that it's a quote-unquote field operation doesn't excuse directing employees into recognized fall hazards. Add $165,514. Running total, $2,052,368. Then comes the Mr. Perkins meeting. Gru wants the funding to build his rocket and he shrink rays Kevin during the conversation. There's another assault with an experimental weapon. Willful harm to an employee by the employer. Add $165,514. Running total, $2,217,882. The funding falls through, and Gru and the crew decide to build their own rocket. The lair becomes a full construction site. During the build montage, you see a claw holding a chair in midair. 3 minions are using it like a floating break room. One's on top, one's on the armrest, one's sitting normally, then the claw bumps something and one of them falls. This is a willful construction fall protection violation. Workers at height with no fall arrest system. Since we already cited facility-wide fall protection for general industry, this is a separate construction-specific violation. And because GRU has now had multiple fall incidents without correcting the systemic problem, it's willful. Add $165,514. Running total, $2,383,396. In the same montage, Dr. Nefario is working on some rocket electronics. The circuits are sparking. Then later, there's heavy smoke when the system malfunctions while he's still working on it. This is willful live electrical work with no lockout tagout. Nefario is working on energized circuits that are actively sparking and smoking. Proper procedures exist and are completely ignored. Add $165,514. Running total, $2,548,910. Then a bit later you get sort of a quieter gag. Minions are playing around on a printer, the shrink-rayed airship suddenly returns to full size right next to them. Nobody gets hurt, but that's still a violation. An obvious hazard that expands from uncontrolled energy release. It's serious rather than willful because the expansion appears unexpected, not something GRU deliberately planned to happen near workers. Add $16,550. Running total, $2,565,460. Near the end, GRU rescues the girls from Vector. He's falling through the air with Margot and the minions form a chain to catch them. It works, and it's sweet. It's actually not an OSHA violation because it's an emergency rescue, not routine work activity. OSHA doesn't cite employers for improvised emergency responses when the emergency itself wasn't created by the employer. Now, for workers' comp, that's $47,316 for the Hammerhead strike, that's 7 rocket launcher impact injuries at $77,614 each. Which is $543,298 total. Head strikes during the Shrink Ray heist, another $47,316. Fart gun knockout, also at $47,316. 10 ceiling trapped workers at $47,316 each. That's $473,160. Shrink Ray assault on Kevin, $47,316. And the chair fall, $54,499. Workers' comp total, $1,260,221. Despicable Me totals are $2,565,460 in OSHA fines, $1,260,221 in workers' comp, and another $250,000 in criminal fines. So it comes out to a combined total of $4,075,681 plus 6 months in the slammer. And the scary part is, the exact same system-wide hazards show up again when he's an adult, plus one more, just at a much bigger scale. So our numbers for failure of abatement come out to $3.97 million, and we're only 2 movies in. Buckle up. Despicable Me 2, 2013. After DM1, you might expect GRU to have a new dad, new workplace moment. What actually happens is he rebrands. The lair is still a workplace, the minions are still employees. The safety culture is still non-existent. The only difference is the product line. Now, instead of weapons and explosives, it's jelly. The movie starts at Agnes's birthday party in GRU's yard. The minions are dressed as medieval knights, but they're still technically on the clock. One minion swings a wooden sword and knocks another one over. Then a bunch jump in and start roughing him up. This is serious workplace horseplay that creates injury risk. It's not willful because GRU isn't directing them to fight, they're doing it spontaneously. But GRU is at the party and doesn't stop it, which means he's failing to maintain a safe work environment. Add $16,550. Running total, $16,550. Then, one minion starts swinging a spiked medieval club around and nearly hits GRU, who just swats him away with a spatula. We don't add a second citation because it's the same hazard showing up twice in the same scene. Then the movie gives you a moment that makes you sit up. 2 minions are doing a magic trick with Edith. One puts a balloon in her mouth, the other revs up a chainsaw. Margot stops it immediately. Bringing a chainsaw into a performance act with a child is so obviously dangerous that there's no room for oops. This is willful because someone chose to bring a chainsaw to a kid's party act and start it up near a child's face. Even though Edith isn't an employee, the minions are, and this is happening during a sort of work event under GRU's supervision. Add $165,514. Running total, $182,064. Now Gru does something genuinely sweet for Agnes. The princess entertainer cancels, so Gru dresses up as a fairy princess and descends from the roof on a rope and pulley system. 3 minions are holding the ropes on a platform with no rails. 2 get distracted and they let go. The rope slips. Gru swings into walls and crashes down. This is a repeated violation because we already cited Gru for facility-wide fall protection violations in DM1. He didn't fix them. Now, in DM2, about a year later, we're seeing the exact same hazard. When OSHA citations aren't abated and the same violations continue, they become repeated violations, which carry the same penalty as willful ones. Add $165,514. Running total, $347,578. After Lucy kidnaps Gru, 2 minions chase after him. That whole segment isn't really an OSHA violation because Gru didn't order them to do it. They're freelancing. The OSHA story picks back up when you return to the lair and see what Gru's quote-unquote reformed life actually looks like. Minions running on elevated platforms carrying crates. Some have helmets, and some don't. This is where we log 5 facility-wide failures for the jelly operation. Fall protection on elevated platforms still with no guardrails a year after DM1, inconsistent PPE enforcement, no machine guarding around vats and conveyors, and no hazard communication for food production chemicals. These are all repeated violations because they're the same facility-wide failures we cited in DM1. Gru had a year to fix them. He didn't. That's 5 repeated violations at $165,514 each, adding $827,570. Running total, $1,175,148. And then the movie gives you the most OSHA nightmare gag in the entire franchise. A minion trips and falls into a giant vat of orange jelly mixture. And nobody notices. The production line keeps running. The minion gets sucked through the process. Orange vat to purple liquid to final jelly vat. Then he pops out into a jar on the conveyor belt. This is another major catastrophic exposure event. This is willful because Gru designed and operates this system. He knows workers are present, he knows the vats are dangerous, and he built zero protection in. The vats have no guards, there's no emergency stop system. A worker entered the production steam and the machinery just kept running. Add $165,514. Running total, $1,340,662. Later, Gru tastes a new jelly batch. He hates it and hands the jar to a minion who passes it along. The second minion breaks it in anger. Now there's broken glass and slippery jelly on the floor while minions are running around in protest. This is a serious slip and cut hazard because the jar breaking appears spontaneous and not something Gru planned or knowingly allowed to persist. Add $16,550. Running total, $1,357,212. Dr. Nefario resigns, and the minions give him a 21 fart gun salute. In DM1, the fart gun knocks someone out. Here, it's played off as just a gag and we don't see any clear injury on screen, so we won't add a new penalty. As the movie progresses, we see minions getting kidnapped at various points of the story. Gru doesn't get fined for these kidnappings because he doesn't know they're happening. Kidnapping by an outside party isn't an OSHA violation by the employer unless the employer knowingly failed to protect against a recognized threat. Later, minions are partying in the lair. They're marching on platforms, climbing on hanging lights, and one falls off the stairs. This is more proof footage for the repeated fall protection violation we already counted. Then comes the mall infiltration of Eduardo's salsa and salsa shop. Gru and Lucy call the 2 minions waiting outside with Lucy's car. The minions drive into the mall like they're in a chase scene. They smash through glass doors, bounce up an escalator, and cause property damage until Lucy takes over. This is a serious general duty violation because employees are pulled into a hazardous operation with no training or controls. It's serious rather than willful because Gru and Lucy called them for emergency backup, not as planned dangerous work. Add $16,550. Running total, $1,373,762. Now you get one of the funniest scenes and also one of the easiest OSHA moments to explain. Gru is in his home office trying to call Lucy and ask her out before she leaves on a flight to Australia. He panics and burns the telephone with a flamethrower. The smoke alarm goes off. 3 minions dressed as firefighters respond. One breaks through a wall with an axe, swinging it dangerously. Another blasts a fire hose so hard it launches him into walls and the ceiling. The extinguisher gets used like a weapon. Gru watches all of this and doesn't stop it. This is willful because Gru created the fire hazard with the flamethrower. The response is chaotic and dangerous. Workers are being injured by their own safety equipment. Gru is present and does nothing.
What are you doing?
Nothing. Just hanging around.
Add $165,514. Running total, $1,539,276. Now we need to talk about the PX41 injections. The movie makes it clear that Dr. Nefario is working for El Macho. He's the one injecting Minions with the transformation serum. Gru isn't ordering it. So the PX41 injections themselves aren't OSHA violations on Gru's ledger. What Gru does do later is bring 2 Minions with him for the rescue mission and knowingly push them into life-threatening danger. He colors them purple to disguise them as PX41 victims. The plan fails. Those 2 workers, alongside with Gru himself, are being chased by hostile transformed Minions in a life-threatening situation. This is willful because the employer knowingly exposed workers to severe hazards as part of a planned rescue operation. Gru knew the plan was risky. He committed to it anyway. Add $165,514. Running total, $1,704,790. For workers' comp, sword hit at the party, $47,316, jelly vat near drowning, $77,614, and 2 emergency response injuries from the axe and hose chaos at $54,499 each is $108,998. Workers' comp total, $233,928. Despicable Me 2 comes with OSHA fines at $1,704,790 and workers' comp at $233,928 for a combined $1,938,718. At this point, Gru has racked up over $7 million in violations. And because Despicable Me 2 shows the same 8 system-wide problems are still alive and kicking, OSHA can issue another 30-day failure to abate penalty fees. That's another $3.97 million. You'd think he'd learn something, but you'd be very wrong. Despicable Me 3, 2017. By DM3, Gru has fully turned away from the evil life and is trying to live like a regular person. Him and Lucy go on a mission assigned by the AVL mission to secure the Dumont Diamond and stop the supervillain Balthazar Brat. The mission goes sideways and they both get fired. Then we get back to Gru's lair and find out that the Minions have formed a union. They don't like the fact that Gru has completely sworn off villainy, so the union, led by Mel, began a mass walkout. Now, quitting itself isn't an OSHA violation, so everything that the Minions do while they're gone, getting arrested,
this is for my safety,
taking over a prison, escaping, none of that is Gru's OSHA bill. They're not his employees anymore. Only 2 Minions still remain in Gru's workforce, Dave and Jerry. Then the rest of the movie takes place in Fredonia at Drew's mansion, so Gru technically wouldn't be responsible for any safety violations that we see at his place. Unless it's clearly work activity under Gru's direction, we don't stack OSHA fines. So the ledgers for Despicable Me 3 stays at $0, for a simple reason really. Most of the Minions quit, so the exposure stops being Gru's problem. Despicable Me 4, 2024. Now, the final movie starts with Gru and Lucy back on AVL operations. Maxime Lemal gets taken down by Gru and the AVL. He eventually escapes and is seeking revenge against Gru and his family. So, to protect them all, the AVL relocates the Gru household into hiding. In this movie, again, the majority of the Minions are sidelined and get taken to AVL headquarters for the Mega Minions program. That whole program's run by the AVL. Not Gru's direction, so not his OSHA bill. Gru's OSHA story in Despicable Me 4 is about the 3 Minions still living with him because that's the space that he controls. They arrive at the safe house. The Minions spot a vending machine and immediately go crazy. One Minion crawls into the snack pickup slot. He gets stuck, and now instead of helping, the other Minions smack him and mess with him. Then, they shove him deeper into the machine until he's fully trapped inside. Now, this whole thing becomes a running gag throughout this movie, so we're only going to count this once. These are 2 hazards at first: entrapment in equipment and workplace bullying that worsens an existing injury situation. Both are serious violations because it appears to be spontaneous stupidity rather than Gru directing them into the machine. That's 2 violations at $16,550 each, adding $33,100. Running total, $33,100. Then a few scenes later, we see the vending machine with the trapped minion is now right by the pool. The other two minions are roughhousing in the water, so now it's a trapped worker next to a water hazard. This is another serious violation for unsafe placement near drowning risk. Add $16,550. Running total, $49,650. The movie continues, and we then get to a more serious, more direct work risk. Poppy figures out who Gru is and blackmails him into a heist at Laissez Pasbon. Gru uses the remaining two minions on the heist. They all come down the top window using a makeshift rope with no proper equipment or safety harness to steal a school mascot, and barely escape with their lives. Oh! That's a violation right there, and it's repeated again because we've covered fall protection in previous movies, and yet Gru doesn't take any measures to prevent it. Add $165,514. During the escape, one minion is literally carrying Gru like a pack animal, while another is handling Gru Jr., who, by the way, is also on this heist for some reason. It doesn't matter that Gru is annoyed or being blackmailed. In OSHA terms, this is a clear break-in with obvious risk of being caught, chased, or injured. This is willful because the employer knowingly brought workers into a severe hazard as part of an assigned task. Add another $165,514. Running total, $380,678. For workers' comp, the vending machine, entrapment, and ongoing bullying represent one clinic visit level injury, $47,316. Despicable Me 4 totals, OSHA fines, $380,678, workers' comp, $47,316, combined, $427,994. So when you add it all up across 5 movies and nearly 50 years of operations, here's what Gru's workplace safety record looks like. Minions of Gru comes in at $910,503. Despicable Me at $4,075,681. Despicable Me 2 lands at $1,938,718. Despicable Me 3 has no obvious violations, and Despicable Me 4 closes out at $427,994. Grand total, $7,352,896 just in civil fines and workers' compensations. And if we add the $11,414,000 for failure to abate, that figure shoots up to a massive $18,766,896 plus at least 6 months in jail. And that's with conservative counting. 1 citation per system failure, 1 comp claim per visible injury, no punitive damages, and no severe penalties for failure to abate. The reality is probably worse, because OSHA can cite every single instance of a repeated violation, every platform without a guardrail, every worker without a hard hat, every day a hazard goes unfixed. For a man who once managed to shrink and steal the moon, you'd think he could shrink a debt, but OSHA is the one villain Gru can't outrun with a freeze ray. So here's the question, can Gru actually afford to pay off all of this? Can Gru afford the fines? Let's do the math. Gru is a successful villain-turned-reformed dad. He's stolen the moon. He's got a massive underground facility. He clearly has resources. But $18.7 million is an insane amount of money, even for a supervillain. Could Gru get out of it? Maybe. He could contest the citations within 15 days. He could argue the minions aren't employees, they're volunteers, or autonomous little chaos creatures who just showed up. He could claim his quote-unquote operation isn't a legitimate business, so OSHA doesn't apply. But that's not the best line of argument when you're running a multi-level industrial facility with routine work, equipment, and a workforce in the hundreds. So the most likely outcome is a settlement. There's also another way to escape the fines, and that involves the AVL bailing him out. To keep their top agent in the field, the AVL would reclassify his lair as a classified national security site, using their federal budget to pay off OSHA or leveraging legal loopholes to argue the minions are autonomous volunteers rather than employees. Ultimately, Gru can afford to stay free only if he's too big to fail for the AVL. He gets out of it not through villainy, but through bureaucratic intervention. So, while he may have survived every supervillain on Earth, Title 29 of the Code of Federal Regulations might be Gru's most invincible foe. He might be a reformed dad, but Gru's safety record is, and always will be, just plain criminal.